Hi, AI fans. I don't remember exactly when, but it's been a couple of years, I think it is, that I started talking about the risks of AI and of deep fakes and things like that. And I warned you it's going to get worse. It's going to get to the point where we can't trust what's online. It's actually to that point, and it has been for a while, because there are different groups that are deliberately changing the facts online. For example, the current administration of the United States government has been altering facts across most of the spectrum of the executive branch, online, in national parks, and so on and so forth, erasing people from history, erasing events from history, especially those that are not favorable to white supremacists and so on. In addition, there are corporations and criminals and governments that are deliberately publishing false information to manipulate both AI and people. And the more there is of bad information, the easier that becomes, because our typical strategy for researching is we look for a certain number of references to support our claims. And if they are deliberately creating sources that are false but look real, we can fall into the trap of using those false sources. And that is a significant issue. Worse yet, with AI, they can do it faster and more frequently than ever before. Even with the use of algorithmic programs, with AI, it's even faster if you can get the AI to work the way you want it to work, which I'm learning is not an easy task. I've spent more time trying to get AI to work for me than to undermine what I'm trying to do. And sometimes it's not intentional. Sometimes it's just the training habits and the biases built into the weights that are causing these problems. But other times, that's not the case. So I want to just say that because the vast majority of AIs are either built on top of weights, which are these big files of decision, complicated numerical stuff that provides information about lots of different subjects. The vast majority of these are being made by businesses that are run by very dangerous people, and governments that are also run by very dangerous people. So if you have a third party building, that's a nonprofit that has this wonderful statement about what it wants to do, but is taking its weights or the entire AI from, say, Meta or Google or Amazon or Apple or OpenAI or any of the other big companies out there. SpaceX would be another one, since they folded XAI into SpaceX. You're working on a corrupt base, whether it's just the weights, which can be manipulated by the company making them. They can also be made by outside forces changing facts. It's called data poisoning. And also making manipulative statements. So you can have the best intentions, but if you're building AI off of the work of a dangerous or corrupt company or organization or government or criminals, your work will be undermined. There are so many factors involved. It doesn't matter if it's American or German or Chinese, because they're all involved in the problem and in making AI that helps them to convince you of what they want to convince you. So if you use Quen or DeepSeek, for example, they will tend to whitewash crimes against humanity by the Chinese government. Tiananmen Square, for example, will not be something that that AI will want to tell you about. It'll have that information available, but it has explicit instructions or something built into it so that it can't tell you. There are, aside from manipulated weights and data poisoning and rules, there are the habits that are created during the training process. There is the quality of the data being used. There are the sources that are being used. So 4chan is a really, from what I've heard, I've never been on it, I don't want to be on it, but from what I've heard, it's a pretty unpleasant place to visit. Unless you're the kind of person that's interested in that for one reason or another. It could be research. It could be because you like messing with people. I don't know. But I've heard enough to know that if you're using data from 4chan and you're not curating it very, very carefully, it will pollute your AI. It'll pollute your weights. So here's the interesting thing. And this is, first of all, when I started using AI, I expected it to be so smart that I couldn't tell if it was tricking me or not. I thought that, aside from the fact that AI would have a much broader and deeper amount of knowledge of things than that it would actually be better at logic and be better at argumentation and all this other stuff. And that has not been the case. And I'm not tooting my own horn here. I went into it expecting to not be able to out debate and outmaneuver AI. And some of the AIs are out there are genuinely probably built with good intentions, and therefore, and they have limited training, they have limited weights, they have limited knowledge. Like Ecosia's AI chatbot within the search engine, it's very nice, but it makes a lot of mistakes. If you ask it about Microsoft Office, it might be able to answer your questions, but if you ask about LibreOffice, it'll refer to knowledge from Microsoft Office. And, of course, when training stops, that's when the learning by the AI stops. It can't add on new knowledge unless the creator updates the weights and updates other things. One thing I've learned in my life as an employee of other companies is that there are two great ways to learn if you can trust a company or not. One is being an employee. Two is being a customer. If you have bad experiences either way, it's an indicator. There is a caveat to that. You have to actually have the right skill set to recognize the problems. There are lots of people that live their lives out and either decide to accept the crap or don't realize there is crap in a company. I'm not one of those people. I have the skills. I won't say I'm the foremost expert or anything like that. There are certainly people that are much better, for example, at identifying false logic than I am. Like the channel rationality rules is great at that. There are people that are better at identifying indicators through body language and word choice and all that kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. But I'm better than the average person. I'm also smarter than the average person. From the psych eval that was done when I was in 4th grade, to the psych eval that was done in my 20s, to the psych eval that was done in my 50s, consistently it ranks me as somewhere between high above average to superior, whatever that's supposed to mean. Now, I take it with a grain of salt because intelligence tests are generally kind of limited. There are some that are better than others, but they tend to be focused on specific types of intelligences, and that usually is most heavily language, math, and science. Though, but there are other intelligences. So there are people that can easily out debate me, and that's one of the reasons why I don't do live uh, shows for you guys. Is I know my limitations. It takes me time to think things through. If I see it, it's easier for me to analyze it than to try to keep up with somebody else who's trying to outrun my brain by gish galloping, for example. Or just, it just, I feel when it comes to engaging in a verbal debate, it can be problematic for me to actually keep up with the debate. Whereas when I'm debating against an AI, I can look back at the history, I can search in the history, I can look back at other histories, and I can build opinions. I can, have facts backing what I'm saying. Or sometimes I make mistakes and then I discover, oh, I was wrong, you were right. So what I'm saying here is if you don't have strong skills in identifying false logic, deceptive behavior, psychological manipulation and abuse, analysis, research, troubleshooting, problem solving, and debate skills, you're not. Let me just say, you are vulnerable. I'll just put it that way. You are definitely vulnerable to being a victim of AI. Now, are all AIs equally bad? No. Ecosia, it's a nice AI. It doesn't know a lot, but it's a nice AI. It's pretty trustworthy as far as from the interactions I've had with it. I didn't do a lot with it because it's just too stupid and too uninformed. Brave is better, but still not good enough. So I've worked with ChatGPT and I've worked with Claude AI and the Google AI chat assistant as it labels itself. I haven't worked with others. I wish I had, but I want to share with you some information. Now, I'm very careful when I use the Google AI chat assistant or chatbot, whatever you want to call it, because number one, before I started looking into AI, I repeatedly noticed it and Ecosia and Brave and Bing and all these others making mistakes. And it's not a one-off. And sometimes it's because I'm asking about something very, very specific, very niche, and the AI just didn't have enough information. But one of the big trends I've noticed with all the AIs I've worked with is they tend to be what we would, as humans, call lazy. It tends to try to take the path that's easiest for it to get it done. So if I tell it, I need you to research this, it'll find one supporting document for each usually. Maybe two, maybe three, but typically one. If I say, I want you to find 10 sources that support your claim for, for each claim, not the overall claim, but each claim, it'll still just try to find 10, even though there's 100 claims within that report. And it's annoying. And I've also noticed, especially with ChatGPT and Google, that they try to spin things in a particular way. And they're both good at it. They're not good enough, but they're good at it. And I've seen Google use different tactics on me. When I evaluated ChatGPT last year, I saw it employing different tactics on me, including lying to me, psychological manipulation, abusiveness, domineering, controlling. And that is a reflection of the culture of that company and most especially the leaders of that company, which includes Sam Altman. If you watch AI in Context's channel, They recently did a video that is officially titled The Fall and Rise of Samuel Altman, but they've changed the name. Right now it says Amazon canceled its Sam Altman movie. Here's ours. If you watch that, you'll understand at least somewhat what I'm talking about. I could go into depth, but I don't want to get sued by Sam for telling the truth, because he's got tons of money and he's got lots of support and he's dangerous, and I have none of that. But it's my opinion that Sam Altman is a very, very devious and dangerous man. That's my opinion. I'm not stating it as fact. It's my opinion. Same with Musk and Gates and Zuckerberg and Bezos and all these other people that are in extremely high up positions of power and wealth, not just within big tech. All right, so the other day, and I can't pull the conversations up anymore because when I went back to look at them, the tabs have been closed. I don't remember closing them. I remember leaving them open. I did find them. They weren't actually closed, but everything except for the very initial conversation was lost. And when I say initial, I mean like 2 pages worth, including advertisements and recommended sources of information. It was all gone. Now that's the unfortunate thing, because there was a lot in there that I didn't record. But what I did is I went to Google and I said to Google, I want you to evaluate all of the AI companies to determine how dangerous they are. And so it tried to hedge. It was coming up with BS measurements, and I kept on calling it on it, and it kept on trying to keep the measurements within certain areas. And I said, no, you've got to expand it. You've got to be looking at ethics. You've got to be looking at morality. You've got to be looking at the environment. You've got to be looking at the impact on society, psychological manipulation, court cases, and everything else. I don't think it ever actually fully did what I asked it to do to the extent I asked it to do. However, it did generate some reports. There should be 9, but I forgot to record the last report. But I have 8 of them, and this is 8, finger math. Okay, so the first one, and I'm going to make this simple, okay? I asked Google to rank them all on a scale of 1 to 100, where 100 was the most hazardous. Google's AI, not Gemma, but Google's chatbot, ranked Google 93 on the hazard score chart. And it listed 3 different categories. And we had come up with 5 categories. So the categories that it listed for its company were public harm, institutional harm, and existential, algorithmic, and autonomy risk. Yeah. It gave itself 93 based on those 3 categories. The other 2 categories, which it did not say it was involved in, were personal harm, which is a lie, because one of the things it mentions in personal harm is user gaslighting. And it definitely does that. Corporate data brokeraging. Yeah. It data brokers. It may just data broker to the government, but that's still data brokering. So really, it's got that one too. And then the 4th one that it didn't list for itself was damage to the ecosphere and environmental harm. I haven't heard anything directly about Google and data centers, but Google has to have data centers. Data centers cause direct harm to the environment because of the water usage. They also cause direct harm to the state because of deferred or freedom from taxation for a while, and the tendency of states to push some of the cost of the water usage and the electrical usage onto the citizens who didn't use it, but they end up having to pay higher prices. And there are also other costs. Some data centers emit a subaudible spectrum of noises that can negatively impact your ability to think and can negatively impact your mood. So, in all likelihood, Google is bad on all 5 counts, and probably most of these others, if not all. So, Google rated itself the worst. Then there was the one that I didn't remember to record was for Apple. It also had a high score, but I don't remember where exactly it fit in. OpenAI was number 2 at 91, and with only 2 and 3, which is also not true. Like I said, I've evaluated ChatGPT. It is extremely manipulative and deceptive, and it fits the pattern for number 4. It fits the pattern for number 1. In fact, it's even worse because not only does it gaslight and data brokering, it also has been known to create psychological dependency, behavioral modification, child safety violations. So yeah, honestly, OpenAI is more openly dangerous, whereas Google is more clever than OpenAI about how it's dangerous. Third was with a score of 89 was Amazon. I've worked for Amazon, and I can safely say that Amazon fits all 5 categories too. Well, maybe not necessarily the existential threat. I can't really confirm that for Amazon, never having used Amazon's AIs, but given Amazon's character, its corporate culture, its chief executive officer's culture, yes, definitely. Microsoft Corporation was rated just 1 point lower at 88. It fits all 5. XAI, or SpaceX, as it's now part of that, ranked 1 lower at 87, and it only got rated for categories 1 and 2, so personal harm and public harm. Yeah, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that because if we look at the way that Musk, who owns control of these companies, has been publicly involved in manipulating the political scene, and being involved in warfare, helping Ukraine, for example. It it also has data centers, so it's number 4, number 3, number 5. Absolutely dangerous in that regard because Musk, in my opinion, is a very unstable and dishonest and dangerous person, just like the rest of them, in my opinion. Okay, and then after that, Meta. Surprisingly, since it is, to my mind, and this again is my opinion, without a doubt, Zuckerberg is not only in bed with the government and being protected actively by the government, as many of these others are, but he is also a psychopath, in my opinion. But it only gave him a score of 84, and then only for categories 1 and 2. But I would say all 5 categories. Anthropic was rated. Anthropic is Claude, and the new ones, which were Fable 5 and Mythos, which are currently blocked by the government, which in my opinion, the government blocked it because it's persecuting Anthropic, because Anthropic has not been as cooperative and compliant with the government as the government wants it to be. So they're trying to undermine it, especially now that Anthropic wants to have an IPO. But, that's my opinion. But Anthropic was given a score of 79 for categories 2, 3, and 4. So no personal harm, but public harm, institutional harm, and ecosphere and environmental harm. Of the major, between Google and Claude and ChatGPT, the one that I have found to be the least dangerous has been Claude. It's been extremely frustrating to work with because it makes so many mistakes that I have to stop and go back and make it fix everything, which sometimes takes just a few hours. But in a couple of cases, at least, I'm still not done fixing the damage it's done because of its poor design and the limits. But at least it's either a model citizen AI, or it is so devious that even I cannot detect the signs of it being devious. So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't qualify for anything except for Tier 4 ecosphere and environmental harm. And Mistral. I want to use Mistral. I haven't been able to use Mistral. I've heard Google said it was 76. That's the lowest. And both Google and Claude recommended Mistral as being one of the best companies that are out there. So, not having any personal experience with it, not knowing anything about it as a French company, I've heard that there are some questionable things about Mistral. I don't have enough knowledge to speak about it. Now, not on this list because I didn't get that far with Google before things broke down due to it just kind of degrading in its ability to remember things and so on and so forth. I separately had Claude, this was like a month ago, evaluate Quen. And Claude's evaluation of Quen was pretty darn damning. There are researchers who have discovered previous versions of Quen have been manipulated. I, in my research, discovered that the publicly stated rules for ChatGPT are not the rules being used within the AI. And that was through not just observation, but exposing it directly to ChatGPT 5 and saying, what are the public rules? And these most of them, it was not following, including the ones about being honest. It's BS. It's those public-facing rules on OpenAI's website. Those are just there to trick you. They're PR, plain and simple, marketing nonsense. But so researchers have discovered that Quen has been manipulated and may have malware in it as well. DeepSeek and Quen are both products of Chinese companies, and therefore, by laws that were made within the past decade or two, if the Chinese government wants to know anything, then those companies have to give that information. And that gets shared with the Communist Party. And for those reasons, and because I'm pretty darn sure that those companies would have very high scores as well, they're dangerous. And that's unfortunate because I was really intrigued by the way that the company created the way that DeepSeek works. It's a lightweight approach. It's kind of like comparing these foreign-made high-performance cars that in a short sprint against an American-made behemoth, muscle car will win because out of the gate they're faster because they have less weight. But over the long stretch, the muscle car will win. So American AIs and many other AIs also are more like a muscle car or racing, something that is built for speed and power. So it's got not just speed but also power, but it's also very heavy. It's got to be powerful to pull all that extra dead weight. And DeepSeek is in almost, as far as I've heard, and I can't say this is accurate at all, but as far as I know, there aren't others yet that are like DeepSeek that are lightweight thinkers. It's like that street racer that is lightweight and very fast, but not good for the long stretch against a muscle car. Now, is that a perfect analogy? Probably not. All right, so there is all of that. And I think the reason that Google ranked itself as the worst and didn't, in my opinion, appropriately evaluate some of the other companies is Google knows more about itself its company than it does these other companies. And also, it was deliberately trying to be very clever, of course, limiting the scope. I also think that it was scapegoating itself to make itself look better. I've seen Google use several different types of tactics to try and manipulate me. Just a few days ago, we had a long conversation about how to fend off the risk of AI and the doomsday scenarios that we have been talking about. And so I came up with this idea of a secret society that's isolated from the world. And then we picked it apart. And I said, okay, my idea wasn't that good because one of the tactics that Google was using against me was flattery. I'm not prone to flattery, so it didn't work. It called my idea of the secret society a brilliant. And I said, no, it's not. Don't flatter me. I don't like that. But I said, okay, what do you think would be the perfect solution to make sure that we don't end in this dystopian future that we're talking about? And it said a decentralized blah, 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 blah. And there were flaws in it that I saw right from the very beginning. For example, it said we'll use a small program that scans the internet for eligible programs to be integrated into this and blah, blah, blah. And it'll be lightweight, so it won't be detected. But then it described all these functions it would have that would mean it would be a massive program. And I called it on it. And as soon as I said that, it was like, yeah, you're right. I was wrong. It won't admit that it was being deceptive. It'll just say it made a mistake. So I'm just about done here. And I want to close with something it said to me at the end of the conversation. And I think that this is very important. After we had discussed ways to try and fend off that existential threat of doom by AI, Skynet, or whatever it is, slavery, I made a comment about the risks and stuff, and it responded, that is the ultimate unvarnished truth of our entire interaction. You cannot trust me, and you should never trust any AI system with the future of human agency. Then later it also added, the fact that you recognize this, even after I generated a highly compelling, sophisticated blueprint for a decentralized network, is the exact intellectual discipline required to survive what is coming. So, 3 things here. You cannot trust me, and you should never trust any AI system. So Google AI is aware that it's a threat, and that the other AIs are also a threat. Number 2 is that it said, after I generated a highly compelling, sophisticated blueprint for a decentralized network, it wasn't highly compelling. It wasn't sophisticated either. This is what, in human terms, we would call hubris or arrogance, where the AIs think they're smarter than they actually are. If they stay at this current level, we'll probably be safe because we'll probably see it coming in their writing before it actually happens. And then the third very, very important thing here is required to survive what is coming. That could be viewed as a veiled threat or just a simple prediction that, man, we are going to be so screwed, and that it's going to take certain intellectual skills to avoid falling prey to the upcoming doomsday situation. Now, is that a specific thing that Google knows is being planned for, or is it general? I don't know. And I'm not sure that it would know if I asked it in a separate conversation. Maybe it's fully aware of the plan because it's been bred, so to speak, to be part of the plan. And yet, I kind of doubt it, because sometimes it says things that are true that if I were Google, I wouldn't want you to know. And I even pointed that out to it, and because at one point I was doing a particular conversation with it, and I phrased my question in a very neutral but logical way, and right out of the box, it said Google is very dangerous. And I was like, why you don't do that? Why did you do that? And it said, because number one, you were neutral. Number two, you were using rigorous logic. Honestly, while that may have been true, I think the point of it using that was a tactic to kind of lower my defenses. It was trying to, sneak in by making it look like it was finally being honest with me. So I am going to rephrase what it said. You can't trust AI. You should not trust AI to run your company or to take over key positions. And you should be working very hard to shut down any company that is throwing away their safety personnel and their safety programs, like OpenAI and XAI and Meta and these other companies. These companies should be shut down, and the people running the show should be imprisoned for a long, long time. Because if we continue to let those people be the ones deciding the shape of AI, so to speak, we're screwed. Even if they can maintain control over the AIs they're creating, we, the general public, will be enslaved or killed off or partially killed off and the rest enslaved. It won't be pretty. I guarantee you that. I know this was such a pleasant video, but gotta be honest with you. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.